Alright, we're back, of course, talking Final Fantasy VII. We're talking Remake Part 3 again. Of course we are, because what the hell else is there to talk about? So with our last video, we talked about the submarine. We kind of discussed what was underneath the water. We mentioned the Sunken Gelnika, but we kind of glossed over. We didn't really talk about the, I guess, location itself, the dungeon itself. That was intentional because I wanted to do kind of a dedicated video discussing the location a bit, kind of my thoughts and what I kind of hope for, expectations, kind of general stuff we've been doing here lately on the channel. I did mean to put this video out yesterday. I did want to record it and upload it yesterday for Halloween because it is kind of a spooky location. It's not like actually scary. There's nothing I would really deem scary in the original FF7, but there are like creepy locations, right? Like the Shinra Manor, Train Graveyard to a certain degree. It's definitely like creepier, I would say, in the remake project. Then you have like Cave of the Yi, and then I guess the Sunken Gelnika. The setting itself of like the sunken ship, you know, deep below the ocean. You gotta like avoid emerald weapon to get to it. The monsters that you fight there, you also find like Hades on the ship. Like there's some decent atmosphere there where it is kind of a creepy location. Go back to the Highwind video I did like a week or so ago. I kind of talked about, I guess slightly sort of ranted a bit about there not being like optional dungeons in the remake project, at least up to this point right now. But specifically also like what happened in the days of like optional dungeons with a bit of lore. And the example I used for that was the Omega runes from Final Fantasy X. For me, it's a good example of what I want from an optional dungeon in a Final Fantasy game where there's a bit of lore to it. Omega was a monk 700 years ago that defied the teachings of Yevon, got banished here, and then became a fiend. That's really kind of all that it is, but for me, that's enough to give the location a purpose besides simply being this like optional dungeon with really strong monsters. And the Sunken Gelnika is kind of that for Final Fantasy VII. It's one of the few optional dungeons in the game, and there is a story here. It's really just that it was a ship that was carrying like weapons, materia, and monsters that were designed to take down Sephiroth, and it was shot down by a weapon. I don't know if we ever got confirmation of which particular weapon it was, because they all have like ranged attacks, but this was a ship that's flying around in the air. An ultimate weapon is one that's like flying around the world that you gotta like bump into with the airship and stuff or whatever, so maybe that was the one. I don't know. Yeah, there is lore here. It's not super in-depth, but it is there. The problem with this location versus something like the Omega Ruins is it is kind of missable. I don't know exactly what causes Reno and Rude to not be there. I think it has to do with like End of Disc 2 stuff, like the diamond weapon attack in Midgard and the parachuting in and all that other shit. Like I don't know exactly what causes it, but there's a way you can come here and not get the dialogue with Reno and Rude, which does miss out on what little lore there is here. I'm going to continue the comparison of the Omega Ruins versus the Sunken Gelnika. What that location lacks that the Omega Ruins has is a really strong fight. Obviously, you do fight Reno and Rude, but they're not actually hard. Whereas, like, Ultimate Weapon and Omega Weapon in the Omega Ruins are like super boss fights. Not the hardest super boss fights in FF10, but they are still pretty strong depending on when you're doing that location. I've always found it kind of weird, too, that the Gelnika didn't have, like, some disgusting monster to fight at the end of it or something, especially considering like you have the genetically designed monsters on the ship that are fucking horrifying to look at. Like, I mean, come on, look at this thing. What the fuck? I think that's something that the remake project could maybe kind of fix, is giving us like an actual boss fight, maybe a stronger, better boss fight. I don't mind fighting Reno and Rude. We've kind of fought them a lot already when you think about it in the remake project, right? We fought Reno and Rude separately and then together, and then we fought all kinds of variations of the Turks in Rebirth. I don't know that I necessarily want to fight them again in the Sunken Gelnika, but maybe they could be there as a fight, but not the fight. Maybe there's something else that's stronger. Do you go the route of Super Boss or something? I don't know. Given that it's a location that has some of the strongest enemies in the original FF7, I think you could go the route of having like a Super Boss fight there. I don't know if they're going to do that, though. That's what's kind of hard going into the third game, because if you had not really had that shit, like your hard fights in Remake and Rebirth are in the fucking simulator. Is Charlie going to be down there in the Gelnika waiting for us? And maybe that's like where his arena is, and we fight him, and he's a Super Boss finally. To be honest, I wouldn't even mind if they changed like what little lore there is for the Gelnika, because I kind of forget it a lot of times, because I don't always do everything in an FF7 playthrough, and I've maybe gone down there before when like Reno and Rude aren't there, so I always kind of forget what the purpose of the Gelnika is, and I always forget that it's like a recent thing that was sunk and not some like ancient ship that's been down there for like a long time or something. And I personally much prefer that. I'd rather it be like some ship that was lost to the ocean that Shinra can never recover, that has, you could do the same thing, having powerful weapons and enemies and material on the ship. It's just something not related to like Shinra trying to like fight Sephiroth or thinking they're capable of taking down Sephiroth. I much prefer the idea of it being like a completely optional location, to the point that like nothing really ever points you in that direction. It's just something you stumble upon when you're exploring the ocean. Maybe you could throw in like some NPC dialogue somewhere in the world that points in that direction somewhat, like at least the idea of it or something. Maybe there's like an NPC talking about like a ship that was destroyed a long time ago that belonged to Shinra that had a bunch of powerful stuff on it. Like that's all you really need. Just something I really love about like long abandoned locations in RPGs, whether that's, you know, the ruins of an ancient civilization, or I guess, you know, a sunken ship at the bottom of the ocean, Something like, you know, the Omega Ruins in FF10 or like the Deep Sea Research Center in FF8. Just something about that type of shit in an RPG just works for me, man. Now, when it comes to the original Final Fantasy VII, you do find really good loot on the Sunken Gelnika. You find Yuffie's ultimate weapon, the Conformer. You find Cid's level 4 limit break. You also find, like, I think a weapon for Vincent and Cloud. You also find, like, the double cut materia, the Hades summon materia. How much of that would they actually keep? I don't really know, because they'd probably change up a lot of stuff. And also, we don't ever find fucking summon materias in the world, so that probably wouldn't even happen. God damn it, I hate it. Unless we circle back to what I talked about having a boss fight down there besides Reno and Rude, maybe you fight Hades. Maybe Hades was some genetically designed summon from Shinra. And maybe you fight him and you beat him and you get the summon materia from beating him. I fucking love that. Make him a super boss. Like the Hades super boss in FF9. It's obviously a bit of copium, because I don't know if they're going to do that when it comes to the third game. They had plenty of opportunity to give us, you know, some of the materia in the world when it came to Rebirth, and it's all attached to Chadley, so that remains to be seen. Maybe they will. Hopefully they will. At least with like Knights of the Round and Hades and whatever summons are left, let us find them in the fucking world, please. Could also explain away some of the other loot that's on the ship, if you want to give it a lore purpose, because like Cid's level 4 limit break being there, he obviously has ties with Shinra. He's worked for the company, right? So that can maybe, it's not like a deep explanation for why his level 4 limit break would be there, but that's a reason it could be there. But also, if we want to like change like the lore or something of the Gelnika itself, it could be a ship that Cid did fly at one point. Maybe that's why that's there. I think that could be a good way to change the story if you want to change the story for the Sunken Gelnika, just because Cid is a pilot. He has worked for Shinra before, and that could... What do you do with the story? How did the ship end up down there? I don't really have an idea for that right now, but that's just something you could do with it. His ultimate weapon being there could be something they confiscated during the Wutai War. Obviously, they've been fighting with Wutai for however long, and it's maybe a weapon that they took or kept or whatever, and that's why it's on there, and they thought it'd be useful to fight Sephiroth. If you give it the same lore that the original FF7 has... But I doubt we'd be getting all the same stuff that we got on the Gelnika in the original FF7, right? Because, like, we don't get locations like that in the remake project, right? You go to the Gelnika and you get Heaven's Cloud for Cloud, the Outsider for Vincent, the Conformer for Yuffie, and the goddamn level 4 limit break, the Highwind for Cid Highwind. Like, I'm 99.99% sure we're not going to get all of that in the Sunken Gelnika in the third game, right? They're definitely going to have maybe one weapon there. Whose weapon? I don't know. Will they have Cid's level 4 limit break? I don't know, because we don't know how we're going to get like final limit breaks and final weapons when it comes to the next game, which is, it's kind of its own discussion too, because we're going to hopefully be getting the ultimate weapons in the next game. Wouldn't make sense if we didn't. Again, that's kind of a topic for its own video, but I do hope that there's like something interesting with like the ultimate weapons in the next game. I hope it's not we're going along the story, we walk into this room and there's a purple chest over there and it's Cloud's ultimate weapon. Like, I will lose my shit if that's what they do. That's really kind of it for the video, my dudes. I just wanted to discuss the Sunken Gelnika, one of the optional dungeons in FF7. I guess maybe like the Ancient Forest is also an optional dungeon. I don't really have a discussion video for that because there's like nothing. You know, you find like Typhoon there. You think you find like a weapon for Vincent, but there's like no lore to it. It's called Ancient Forest, but I don't know if it's actually meant to be attached to the ancients themselves, the Cetra. If it is, then you can maybe do something there. At least like the Sunken Gelnika has a bit of story, a bit of lore, things to talk about. Also, it's got like really strong enemies, right? It's just a kind of an iconic location in FF7 versus Ancient Forest. I don't think is very well remembered at all. You earn Cloud's ultimate weapon in the process of unlocking the Ancient Forest by defeating, you know, ultimate weapon or whatever. So that is cool. There's a cool purpose to it to a certain degree. The path to get into the Ancient Forest rewards you with something, but the location itself is just kind of nothing. Actually, here at the end of the video, I know the video is supposed to be about the Sunken Gelnika, but maybe you guys have an idea for what they could do with the Ancient Forest. Is it even going to be in the game? I kind of hope it is, even though I don't have any, you know, personal attachment to it. It is like at least a memorable location. It's something I do think about a lot when I play FF7. It's a location I've never forgot. I don't really like the location necessarily, but I would like to see it, you know, somehow utilized into the third game. But of course, pass off to you guys. What are your thoughts on the Sunken Gelnika? How do you think they're going to implement it into the third game? Is it going to be an optional location? Are they going to make it a story thing? What do you think is going to be down there? Whether it's optional or not, what do you think we're going to find there? We're definitely not going to come across, you know, 3 new weapons, a level 4 limit break, and a goddamn summon materia. I just highly, highly doubt that shit. But what do you think they're going to do with the Sunken Gelnika? Anyways, that's the video. Subscribe to the channel if you guys are new. Social networks in the description below. Follow me on Twitter, @DavidYT. That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Rogaine, or leave it like Cobain.